Hey guys, Tisha here, and we are back with another Becoming Sister Wives book review. Yes, you caught me. I looked down. I looked down. I was like, I'm going to do it this time, and I am not going to look at that book. So I purposely put the book down, and I still looked down. Welcome back. We are in chapter 15. Celebrity. We're going to be talking about Christine. In case I forget, please do not mind what I have going on over here. I'm trying to catch something or the allergies are acting up. So I have like the Kleenex, the Germex, the Halls, the water, the tea. It's a lot going on over here. But I want to make sure that we get this out because you all have been sticking by me since I began reading this book. In case I forget, thank you so much, Tulips and Cats, for recommending me reading this because I've enjoyed it much more than I thought that I would. And I think you all have too. So let's go ahead and get started. Throughout my entire childhood, I kept my family life as quiet as I could. I had two mothers, 10 brothers and sisters. We were from a prominent polygamous family and thought it best to draw as little attention as possible to ourselves. In school, I never felt comfortable trying out for sports, plays, or any activities. I wanted to be as low profile as possible. I feel like for Christine, polygamy blocked her from a lot of things because she seems like a naturally outgoing, competitive person, and she probably would have thrived in some of these environments. I was raised in a climate of fear. My father was terrified of our family being split up. When he was 8 years old, his life was turned on end when his parents were arrested for bigamy and thrown in jail. They were released after a single night. This is common, especially in the case of female polygamists who are usually sent home to look after the children. My grandparents initially thought their arrest was symbolic and that they would have no more trouble with the law. Not long after their release, however, they got word that the authorities were pursuing them once again. My grandfather fled and went into hiding. All of my grandmothers separated from one another and took their children to live in different states or in far off corners of the same state. The separation meant that my father was permanently cut off from his siblings for years. He had no idea where the rest of his family was. So not only did her family separate from each other and flee, but they did not even remain in contact. That creates a whole nother sense of fear that Christine probably grew up with, which is why she was so stressed out and why she was so nervous about certain aspects of them becoming public, which makes sense. My dad was drafted into the Vietnam War when he was 19. He was frustrated that he had to serve a country whose laws denied his family fundamental civil rights and caused them to live in fear. Do not get me started about that right there, because I'm going to tell you like this. My family is not American, as many of you all know. And a lot of them have come to the United States, became citizens, and fought for a country that in some way still looks down upon them. So hearing her say this, I can kind of relate to that. Even though my father had been separated from my grandfather still believed in the importance of serving America, and he urged my dad to go and be proud of who he was. Although my grandfather and his family lived in a lifetime of fear, he still realized that the fear led to secrecy, and secrecy leads to abuse of power. He advocated for harsher punishment for underage marriages and abusive relationships. I agree with that. He believed that these crimes would be stopped if polygamists could live openly instead of in secrecy. As my grandfather saw it, secret closed societies were directly responsible for the abuses for which the FLDS has become sadly infamous. I don't think it's just the fact that it's secret. I think that it's that you all are cut off, and when I say you all, I mean certain sects, certain religions are cut off from certain things that would allow them to see that there are other options. A lot of times we talk about how naive the brown women were because they weren't like raised in the world. They kind of stayed in their own community. Imagine how that would be for like FLDS, where they don't even get to watch TV and stuff like that. That's a whole nother different world. Openness in theory is a lot different from openness in practice. And while I knew that my grandfather's theory and belief was entirely correct, incorporating it into my everyday existence took a lot of time. I'm a very bubbly and outgoing person. As I grew older, I realized that I wasn't always going to be, that I wasn't always going to be possible for me to hide my family. Okay, so it wasn't me, it was them. It says I instead of it. For my family, y'all. Okay. I'm gonna try this over because I stumble. As I grew older, I realized that I wasn't always going to be possible for me to hide my family or lifestyle from everyone I met. Change the I with it. Can you believe that one thing jacked me up like that? It's just not in my nature to mistreat the outside world as I've been raised to do. I look on the bright side of absolutely everything. I expect the best from people. Maybe for this reason, I often let it slip, both accidentally and on purpose, that I was polygamous. Cody often says that because of my sweet nature, people have no choice but to accept me for who I am. This is honestly the best compliment he could pay me. So back then she was sweet, but now she's a tyrant. And now she's a bad woman who scarred him, according to Robin. Because that's what she was talking about when she was talking about how he wants to line women up and go blah, 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 blah. He was talking about his wives. Perhaps because of my blind trust in the good in humankind, or maybe because I'm a chatterbox, people began to learn about my family. Their reactions were far more positive than I'd been raised to expect. Soon after I married Cody and moved to Powell, Wyoming, I got a wonderful job assisting a curator at a local museum. My boss was a fantastic woman. Since we worked in a tiny office, it was just the two of us. I knew we'd be spending an inordinate amount of time together. The first day at work, my boss asked me about my family and my home life. I told her about my husband, Cody, and his two sisters, Mary and Janelle, who live with us. I hate the fact that they called each other sisters because it just don't it don't rub me right. But I get it, but I don't like it. I explained that Mary and I both had daughters and Janelle had a son. I said that my sister-in-law lived with us for financial reasons. I acknowledged that our living situation was a little unusual, but that we made it work. When the day was over, I got in my car to drive home. I turned on the ignition, but couldn't bring myself to leave the parking lot. I hated myself for having lied to my boss on my first day of work. I turned off the car and marched back into the museum. Good, because what you just did was you lied. And one of the things that you all say is that y'all don't lie. Like lying is wrong. And you spend a good portion of your life lying. So I'm glad that you felt bad about this and you went to correct it. My boss was surprised to see me back so soon. I lied to you, I said. I'm sorry. Cody is my husband. Mary and Janelle are my sister wives. Together we have 3 children, and I will always refer to these children as my children since we are one family. My boss smiled. I had a feeling this was the case, she said. She never judged me, and she never said a single bad word about my family or my lifestyle. Eventually, I opened up to another woman at the museum. She was actually a little envious of the family support I had with my sister wives. She imagined it would have been useful for her when she was raising her children. She also been wondering how I could accomplish so much at home and at work while raising children. After I'd been married to Cody for several years, I was asked to represent our faith in a nonprofit organization, Principal Voices. Y'all remember that Christine was considered polygamous royalty in their area. Except for the FLDS, Each sect of the Mormon fundamentalists has 2 members on the board of Principal Voices. The mission of this organization is to educate others about polygamous families and culture. The group's goal is to empower both polygamous individuals and families, as well as to provide crisis referrals and responses to those in the lifestyle. Principal Voices is the public's face of polygamy. It exists to deal with issues not just inside our culture, but outside it as well. The group handles inquiries from the media, requests for interviews, and assistance with research. It also interacts with the government on a regular basis, mostly through the governmental organization Safety Net. Since I am pretty talkative by nature, and I was getting comfortable talking about my faith, I was often asked to do interviews with the media. Principal Voices gave us extensive media training about how to field questions regarding abuse, sex, and our faith. We were taught how to skim the surface of the question, give a truthful answer without going too much into detail. I learned how to deflect questions from my faith and sex and turn the subject to my family. The underlying principle was to convey our message about our considered and mature choices to live a plural life and help people to understand our community. As a member of Principal Voices, I spent 2 years educating people about polygamy. Think about that, you guys. She went from being someone who educated people about polygamy to now having no desire to be a part of a polygamous family. I spoke at colleges and on the news. I became the spokesperson for our faith, and I loved it. After I had been on Principal Voices for a few years, I started to think that the openness about our lifestyle might lead to more freedom. This realization coincided with an offer from the television journalist who was looking for a polygamous family interview. Principal Voices thought my family would be perfect fit for the show. The adults held jobs, the kids were healthy and happy. There were no underage or incestuous marriages. We were a fairly average, stable, all-American family. So, part of the reason, which we've heard this before, why they even got this show was because of Christine. Let that sink in. That man treated her like she was a burden because she wanted love. And she was part of the reason why his pocket was being lined, because of the way that she appeared and how she presented herself while in Principal Voices. Because there were other people in Principal Voices as well, and they were looking at her. I wouldn't have volunteered my family for the experience without first discussing it with Cody, Mary, and Janelle. Eventually, the 4 adults and our 6 eldest children flew to New York for an interview. Although we were running a risk appearing as a family in front of television cameras, the risk was tempered by the fact that the journalist didn't have an actual television program on the air yet. He was using our story as a demo or a promo that wouldn't be shown to the public. Although we spoke openly on the show, the whole event seemed somewhat secretive and private, which was of great relief. Appearing on this program led us to a paradigm shift. As a family, suddenly, hiding out seemed less intimidating and less possible than it had been before. The production crew mentioned doing a documentary show with our family, and even though we refused, it started to make us think about the possibilities of telling our story publicly. Although I was beginning to feel that it was time to take a public stand, I didn't think a documentary was the right format. While I didn't mind speaking to reporters about my own personal choices, opening up our family to the world was really scary. I had legitimate concerns. I didn't want Cody to be taken away as my grandfather had been, and I didn't want anyone in the family to lose his or her job on account of our beliefs. Even though we turned down the offer to do an in-depth documentary, the family continued to discuss several possibilities for going public with our story. While none of these appealed to me, Cody began to realize that living openly was something he was being called to do. There goes that call word again. Y'all know how I already feel about that, because he was called to marry some of these women, and we see what happened with that. And he got a spiritual witness. He wanted to help educate people about our lifestyle and to create more understanding and tolerant world for our children. Any documentary maker on television producer who wants to explore polygamy first goes to Principal Voices. For years, the woman who leads the organization has been fielding requests for families willing to tell their story to go public. There are very few families and individuals who want to participate in anything that could have endangered, harm, or just exposed their family, especially when it comes to large scale media events. I was one of those people. I didn't mind the interviews that I participated in alone, but involving my whole family had until now remained out of the question. I was approached a few times about telling our family story. One day I told Cody how often I was asked about coming out as a family and sharing our life with the public. Why didn't you tell me about any of these requests? Cody asked. Aside from the interview we had done in New York and a brief segment on the BBC that wasn't shown in America, it hadn't occurred to me to tell Cody about the request for interviews. While Cody was very supportive of my role in Principal Voices and shared my views about opening up to society, I didn't imagine that the rest of our family would want to go public. The next time you're approached about telling our family story, let me know, Cody said. Cody saw $signs. They can tell us in this book all they want to that this was about the fact that Cody, had a calling. Coming on. They could do they could do all of that. They can say that that's what it was, but I don't believe it. Cody saw cha-ching. By coincidence, I have been contacted through Principal Voices by an independent producer, Tib Gibbons, who was looking to do a reality show about a polygamous family. Cody liked the sound of the project and made an appointment to meet Tim in person because we know now that Christine has done most of the groundwork through how amazing she appeared while she was in Principal Voices. Now Cody's going to take it from here. Shortly after their initial meeting, Tim came to our home to talk with us about his ideas. We were immediately impressed with Tim's vision for the show. He had observed the ways in which polygamists were often ridiculed and felt a reality show could go a long way with changing that. He thought that if he portrayed our family as honestly and as openly as possible and showed how essentially normal we are, that people might begin to understand that there's not a whole lot of difference between most polygamists and the rest of the world. Well, we thought that they were normal, and at some points we thought that they were honest. So I guess Tim's vision did come to pass. Tim assured us that the crew would be small. He said that they would respect our wishes whenever we needed to deal with something off camera. That's part of the problem. He gave them too much leeway on that. Tim's attitude and outlook were so honorable that he put the entire family at ease. Naturally, there was a great deal of debate, but in the end, we agreed to participate. It was the right time to tell our story. Warren Jeffs was on trial and the news was flooded with pictures of him marrying underage girls. We needed to provide a counterpoint to that image. We wanted to let the world know that we in no way condone forcible or underage marriage. We don't support any organization that permits a woman to be taken from her family and reassigned to another husband. These things are not acceptable and they have no place in our world. When we consented to the program, we told our children that they should start letting all of their friends know about their family. Their closest friends already knew about our lifestyle. My oldest, Aspen, was really stressed out about telling some of her friends, but when she did, it went really smoothly and everyone was very accepting of her. However, Madison, Janelle's oldest girl, had a totally different experience. One of the girls in her class asked her if being a polygamist meant that her father molested her and she had to marry her uncle and she couldn't wear the color red. Madison was disgusted and horrified, but she was able to demystify the truth about her family and make her friend understand that her home life is pretty normal and completely healthy. I don't think that a friend asking those questions is horrific. I think that the fact that the friend wanted to know says that the friend was concerned, cared, and curious. Once Aspen Madison and most of our other children had told all their friends about the family. They could bring larger groups of friends over to the big house, which they love. The kids thought it was really cool that they could lead their friends through the house and show the different apartments and introduce them to their different moms. It's funny how they say introduce them to their different moms, but I don't recall really hearing a lot of the kids call the other mom's mom. I only remember hearing them call their mom's mom. While the kids were saddled with the problem of opening up to their friends, the adults had a different problem. We had to tell our families, who naturally worry, that we might inadvertently expose them on the show. My family agreed with my decision to go public, but they were concerned that I bring them into it. They weren't really ready to be outed. I had to work hard to convince them that I would never dishonor their wishes and mention their names or show them on television. As we prepared to do the show, we took steps to hide certain identifying details so that our family would stay out of sight, both on television and online. While we knew that it would be impossible to protect our family's privacy entirely, we attempted to do our best and hoped that the media would respect our boundaries. While my family quickly came to terms with my participation in the reality show, I'm afraid that most of the other members of our faith were disappointed in our decision to go public. The plural lifestyle is considered sacred, and many people feel that exhibiting it for the public is like casting pearls before swine. While I am sad to have angered and disappointed so many in my faith, I do not understand how they can tolerate the fact that the world thinks we all marry off our 14-year-old girls to older men. I cannot understand why they are content to live in secrecy and fear. If I had to upset them to make the world a better place, this was a risk I was willing to take. While filming began, it was really strange. It took me a while to get used to having the camera around. Tim would interview us about day-to-day activities, and I'd be at a loss to see why anyone would be interested in hearing about groceries, teacher conferences, and cleaning. It was difficult to know how to behave with the camera rolling. It seems trivial to be concerned about superficial things, but if I knew this crew was showing up for an early morning shoot, I worried about how I would look without makeup. Should I do my hair? Can I let them see me in my pajamas? These were totally new concerns in my life. I already told y'all. Y'all know what you see is what you get. Peeling face and everything. This is me. Suddenly, even the most basic things got a lot more complicated. Life was pleasantly chaotic before, but the show really added a new dimension. I worried about my kids' outfits and their uncombed hair. I realized that some of their rooms might look unacceptable to a television audience, a lot of their rooms. And I don't even think it has anything to do with TV. But, we all like different things. I don't like a messy room. I had to repaint them and buy new bedding and bunk beds. I also realized how dirty the house was. I'm a pretty aggressive cleaner, but with 5 kids and another on the way, I was pregnant with Truly when we first started shooting. Cleaning became a job in itself. Of course, there was an upside of all of this. There's nothing wrong with a cleaner house and nicer furniture. Once we started filming, I had to learn how to be comfortable talking about my lifestyle in front of the camera. My previous media training had instructed me to get the message across about the choices that I made in accepting polygamy, but now I could be as open as I wanted to be about my own marriage. It was a strange transition to share everything from my love for Cody and my children to struggles both inside and outside of the family. Of course, frankness isn't always advisable. While I was comfortable talking honestly on camera for Sister Wives, I was hesitant to be as open during our press tours. By the time we began the publicity for the show, I had learned to trust that Tim and his staff would be honorable when they edited our footage. They didn't change what we said for dramatic effect, and they always conveyed the meaning of our confessions exactly as we wished. However, I didn't have as much faith in the outside media. I quickly discovered that they would edit our answers to suit their purposes and tease something salacious from our story. We made a point of addressing sex in the first episode of our show. We wanted to get it over with so there would be no further questions. We were willing to do this, especially because we were certain that nothing improper would be made of our words. However, during the press junkets, the media always hammered away at the sex questions. We had to find countless ways of deflecting it. Journalists always wanted to know why we were willing to talk about sex, however, briefly on the show, but not in an interview. It was hard for us to tell a person directly that we did not entirely trust his or her intentions. Other television shows and new programs have their own agenda, making it impossible to guarantee we came across as we wish. This made talking about sex completely out of question. The media tours were insane. Nearly every day we had a packed schedule of back-to-back interviews. We got tired, but we still had to remain on guard. We needed to watch every word that came out of our mouths so that nothing could be twisted or misconstrued. We wanted the proper message to get out there, the positive ones that pertain to love and family. Despite our best intentions, from time to time we said the wrong things and had to do a little damage control. That's the problem. They were so worried about their image that to them saying the wrong things was if they said something that was too revealing. And I feel like the wrong things is what makes it right. We want to hear that. That's why right now you got some people who really can't stand Christine because they feel like she's gloating and she's doing all of these things. And you got some people like me that love the fact that she's telling the truth about what was going on. But this can only be expected. We are 5 normal, middle American adults with little or no experience in the ways of media. On the media tours, it was our goal to get across the basic facts about our family and debunk the myths that most people ascribe to us. No matter what journalists asked, we tried to steer the conversation back to something positive. We wanted to come across true to our natures and beliefs, as well as strong, independent adults who've come to our faith of our own volition. We wanted to make it perfectly clear that our children make their own choices. They don't have to live polygamy if they don't want to. And most of all, we wanted to convey the stability and love of our family. During our press junket in New York, we appeared on Nightline. I thought the interview conducted by Dan Harris had gone really well. I was pleased. The night it aired, Cody and I were in our hotel room. It was completely surreal sitting in a fancy hotel in New York City, watching myself on TV and thinking about all the people in the same city watching the same show at the same time. When the announcer introduced our segment, it was clear that she thought we were ridiculous. Her tone of voice and facial expressions made her contempt for us clear. She didn't hide the fact that she thought our lifestyle was wrong. After this less than reassuring introduction, they cut away to the interview, which included wonderful clips of our children. When they returned to the announcer, she was smiling. Her whole demeanor had changed. We clearly made an impact. Good for them. I'll give them credit for that. Good for them. I remember thinking about the millions of people who just watched the same thing and how we might have influenced their thinking for the better. Not all journalists is as kind or considerate as Dan Harris was. After a particularly long day of interviews on that first press tour, I had reached my breaking point. One of the journalists had been pretty brutal to me. He asked me too many questions about whether or not our lifestyle on the show was fair to our kids. He kept trying to get me to admit that I had ruined my children's lives by putting them on TV and exposing them to the public. Now, we know that Christine has already told us multiple times that she has a problem with confrontation. So I'm sure she was very red and uncomfortable during this. He really wanted to force my hand and get me to slip up and say something he could use against me. When the interview was over, I nearly broke down. I need my people, I said. Then my family gathered around me. We joined together in prayer. I drew strength from them and was able to refocus. On tour, we really helped to strengthen one another and to build one another up, which is phenomenal. Since we are able to travel openly as a family, something I hope all polygamous families will one day do, we can be there for every moment. We rely on one another for support during the tough questions and the long days. We are one another's safety net. We are stronger than I'd ever imagined. However, traveling as a family is not always easy. Being on the road as a group of 5 adults is a completely new, unexpected experience and has made our differences more obvious. Yes, because all of their traveling seems to be dramatic, except for the time when they went with the Darger family. We've learned that we really have to meet each individual's needs, and that as a group we have to listen to one another and accommodate one another. We have had to learn how to express in a polite and constructive manner when someone's behavior is bothering us. I learned, for example, that sometimes I really embarrass Janelle. I can be kind of goofy in public. I thought it was all in good fun, but I realized that my actions are embarrassing to her and I feel terrible about this. What she thinks is acceptable in public is far different from what I think is acceptable. We've had to come to a place where we can both have fun and be relaxed while respecting each other's boundaries. Now that we've figured out how to address our various needs and differences, I've grown to love doing things together. I feel a force of power when we are in a big group. We really are dynamic. Sometimes I feel as if we could conquer the world. Part of this empowering feeling comes from the freedom of being open as a family. I know that our decision has made us stronger adults and more secure, not just in our individual marriages, but as a single family unit. I'm especially happy for our kids. No longer do they have to duck awkward questions from curious schoolmates or strangers who wonder how so many siblings could be so close in age. Even now in their Las Vegas public school, they are proud to call one another brother and sister. Now Janelle's kids done caught up with me, y'all. Now Janelle's kids confidently introduce me to their friends as one of my moms. I think openness has brought them closer together. They are a tightly knit group, unafraid to hang out together during school. They are happy to draw attention to themselves and their special relationships. Their classmates refer to them as the Cullens, the vampire clan in the Twilight books. Together they are a force to be reckoned with. Our decision to live openly has allowed our entire family to come into our own. I love meeting all the kids' friends, and I absolutely love taking my sister wives' children places, introducing them as my kids. That's one thing that has remained the same. Christine has always loved the kids. I enjoy being open about my marriage to Cody, and we do many things as a married couple, and he can openly say we are all his wives. It's fun going places together and being recognized. People meet us and talk about how we have changed their minds and their perspective on families and relationships. I feel humbled and overjoyed at the response we receive about family. People grateful that we opened up our lives so they could see this plural family choice. I will say that in the beginning, I think that we all fell in love in some ways with this family. If we didn't, we wouldn't have watched it for as long as we did. It might have started out as curiosity, but we all did have, our favorites. Christine was definitely one of mine, as was Janelle at certain points. But I think that in the beginning, the message that they wanted to get across, which was that they had a choice, we can say that they did accomplish that. Now, the other stuff, I don't know, but we're going to give them that aspect of it. You guys, tell me what you think down below. Did we enjoy this chapter? What do we think about the fact that Christine is the reason why this family got on this show? Even though Cody, did the actual official talk, the fact that Christine was the one being approached and getting the connections, and now we'll see what it's turned into. Let me know what you guys think. Until next time.